Chapter 22. Felix entered the imperial study, his expression calm but determined. He bowed low, his voice respectful yet firm. "Your Majesty, I must once again request that you allow Princess Athanasia to accompany me on an outing to the capital. It is an opportunity for her to experience the world outside the palace walls, something she has never been able to do. This is a chance for her to learn more about the capital and its people, and to interact with the nobles." Claude lifted his gaze from the documents scattered on his desk, his sapphire eyes narrowing with concern. "No." Felix nodded, fully aware of the Emperor's protective nature. "I understand your concerns, Your Majesty, but she cannot remain in the Emerald Palace forever. The capital is her home too, and she has been kept within the palace walls for far too long. Her curiosity is growing, and we must allow her to experience life outside the palace if she is to understand her role in this world." Claude's expression tightened, his lips pressed in a thin line. "I have already allowed her to host gatherings within the safety of the Emerald Palace. That should be enough." Felix took a step forward, his voice soft but insistent. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, hosting gatherings is not the same as stepping outside and seeing the world firsthand. She's growing older, and this is an important experience for her. Other noble families have invited her to join them in the capital, but she has never had the opportunity to go. If we continue to keep her confined, it will only breed frustration." Claude's eyes darkened, his voice firm. "You don't. The outside world is full of dangers, deceit, schemes, risks. I will not expose her to such things, Felix." Felix stepped closer, his tone earnest. "I understand your worry, Your Majesty. But the princess is not a child anymore. She is more than capable of handling herself, especially if she's accompanied by the right protection. She needs to learn to navigate the world outside, and I will ensure she is kept safe. You can trust me." Claude's gaze softened, though the worry never fully left his. "I will personally ensure her safety, Your Majesty. Nothing will happen to her. You have my word." Claude looked at Felix for a long moment, his jaw tight, before he finally exhaled sharply, his shoulders slumping slightly in resignation. "Very well. She may go out, but on one condition: she will have a full escort, and you will take responsibility for her safety. She will not step 1 foot outside the palace without proper protection." Felix bowed deeply, a slight smile of gratitude touching his lips. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will make sure she is safe, I swear it." Claude's voice lowered, a warning in his tone. "Do not fail me." "I won't, Your Majesty," Felix assured, his voice steady with determination. "I'll keep her safe, always." As the grand gates of the imperial palace creaked open, the golden rays of the sun reflected off the pristine white and bright red robes of Emperor Claude, adorned with intricate gold trimmings. Seated beside him in the open carriage was Princess Athanasia, her delicate features framed by the ribbon tied beneath her chin. Her dress, though understated in design, stood out vividly in the sea of common folk who had gathered in the bustling streets of the capital. Across from them sat Lucas, dressed in a striking ensemble of black, red, and white, accented by crosses that made him stand out even further. Felix and the knights, clad in their standard uniforms, rode alongside the carriage in formation, ensuring the safety of their liege and his daughter. Athanasia's excitement was evident as her sapphire blue eyes sparkled with curiosity. She leaned forward slightly, trying to take in every detail of the world beyond the palace gates. The sight of the city, the rows of colorful market stalls, the scent of freshly baked bread wafting through the air, and the murmur of townsfolk, was a stark contrast to the pristine and quiet life behind the palace walls. The moment the people recognized the occupants of the carriage, a hush fell over the crowd before erupting into odd murmurs. "Is that the Emperor? The princess? She's even more beautiful than the rumors say. I never thought I'd see His Majesty walking among us." The streets, once filled with the usual chatter of merchants and buyers, now buzzed with astonishment. Children peeked out from behind their mothers' skirts, wide-eyed. Some shopkeepers bowed deeply, their voices hushed in reverence. Others simply gawked, too stunned to react. Athanasia couldn't contain her smile. Daddy, look. They're all staring at us. Claude barely spared the crowd a glance, his expression impassive. Humph. Of course, they are, he replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Lucas, smirking as he observed the scene, crossed his arms. You act surprised, princess. Did you expect them to treat you like a commoner? Athanasia huffed, puffing her cheeks slightly. It's not that. It's just. I've never been out like this before. Felix, ever the dutiful knight, cleared his throat. Your Highness, please refrain from leaning out too much. We must remain vigilant. Athanasia relented, but her excitement remained. The sheer energy of the city, so lively, so different from the structured life in the palace, filled her with a giddy sense of freedom. For the first time, she truly felt like a part of the empire she was meant to one day serve. As soon as the carriage rolled to a stop, Felix dismounted first, ensuring the area was secure before turning to assist the emperor and princess. Claude stepped down gracefully, his regal bearing untouched by the casual setting. His pristine white and bright red robes, embroidered with gold trimmings, caught the sunlight, making him look every bit the ruler he was. However, it was his surprisingly modest choice of attire that stunned the people. The emperor, is that really him? A merchant whispered in disbelief. He's not wearing his imperial regalia, another murmured. And the princess? She looks so different from the nobles, but she stands out even more. Indeed, Athanasia's understated dress, though elegant, was far simpler than what many had expected from royalty. The wide-brimmed hat atop her golden locks, secured with a ribbon beneath her chin, only added to her charm. Lucas, with his striking black, red, and white outfit adorned with crosses, exuded an almost ominous presence, drawing wary yet fascinated stares from the onlookers. Felix and the knights, clad in their usual uniforms, formed a protective perimeter, though the sight of the emperor and princess in such a casual setting had already thrown the capital into a hushed frenzy. Athanasia barely noticed the murmurs, too preoccupied with the sights and scents of the market. As she held on to her father's hand, she suddenly pulled him toward a small flower stall, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Daddy, look! These flowers are so beautiful, she exclaimed, pointing at a vibrant bouquet of foxgloves, sunflower daisies, dahlias, and roses. The florist, an older woman with kind eyes, smiled and selected the finest bouquet for the princess. Just as she was about to hand it over, Felix swiftly intercepted, taking the flowers first and giving them a quick inspection before passing them to Lucas. It's safe, Felix declared, his expression neutral. Lucas rolled his eyes, but took the bouquet lazily. How paranoid. Athanasia, undeterred, beamed as she thanked the florist. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out a few gold coins and placed them into the woman's hand. The florist's eyes widened. Your Highness, this is too much. The flowers aren't worth. I don't have any silver or copper, Athanasia interrupted with a bright smile. So take it. And thank you for the beautiful flowers. The woman hesitated before bowing deeply. It was only then that she noticed the man standing beside the princess, the emperor himself. Her face paled, and she quickly lowered her head in respect. Claude, still holding his daughter's hand, merely glanced at her before allowing Athanasia to wave goodbye. Felix took the bouquet from Lucas and handed it off to one of the knights before the princess moved on, her attention already captured by the next delight of the market, the scent of sizzling kebabs. The skewers of grilled meat smelled divine, and without hesitation, Athanasia reached out and took one, biting into the tender, spiced meat with a satisfied hum. This is delicious, she declared before turning to Claude and holding it up to him. Father, you should try it. The people watched in stunned silence. The emperor is eating street food? And with his bare hands? The princess looks so happy. She really has never been outside, has she? Claude studied the skewer for a brief moment before sighing lightly and taking a bite. The moment he did, the capital seemed to collectively hold its breath. Athanasia giggled, thoroughly enjoying the sight of her father eating something so simple yet so delicious. See? It's good, isn't it? Claude chewed thoughtfully before giving a slight nod. Humph. It's passable. The people could hardly believe their eyes. Their ruler, the hero of the empire, the emperor, walking among them, dressed humbly, eating street food with his daughter, and even indulging her whims. It was a sight none of them would soon forget. Athanasia's grip on Claude's hand tightened as she pulled him toward a charming little shop filled with the sounds of chirping and fluttering wings. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with spectacles perched on his nose, looked up in surprise as the emperor and princess entered, followed closely by Lucas, Felix, and the knights. Inside, the shop was lined with wooden cages, each housing an array of exotic birds, yellow canaries, bluebirds, regal owls, and vibrant parrots that chirped and cooed at the new visitors. Athanasia's eyes sparkled as she walked up to a cage where a pair of lovebirds sat close together, their feathers a soft blend of green and orange. "They're beautiful," she whispered in awe, turning to Claude. "Daddy, can I?" "You may have them all," Claude interrupted before she could even ask. Athanasia blinked in surprise. "All of them?" Claude turned to the shopkeeper. "Send the finest specimens to the palace." The elderly man stammered, quickly bowing. "As you command, your majesty." "I will ensure only the healthiest and most exquisite birds are delivered." Athanasia clasped her hands together in delight. "Thank you, Daddy." As they exited the shop, she hummed in thought. "We'll need a place for them. I don't want them cooped up in cages all the time." Claude gave her a sideways glance. "Then what do you propose?" Athanasia pondered for a moment before her face lit up. "A greenhouse. One big enough for them to fly freely, with plants and sunlight streaming in." Claude barely hesitated before addressing Felix. "Call an architect when we return. It should be built before the birds arrive." Felix stiffened. "Your Majesty, that would take," Lucas smirked. "I can build it." Felix turned to him sharply. "You?" Lucas shrugged lazily. "It's not difficult." Claude nodded in approval, leaving Felix to sigh in defeat. Athanasia, thrilled, pulled her father into another shop, one she had visited before with Lucas, though the emperor remained unaware. The boutique was quaint yet refined, displaying elegant dresses along polished wooden racks. The tailor, a middle-aged woman with keen eyes and nimble fingers, looked up in shock as the emperor and princess entered. Athanasia wasted no time browsing through the dresses, picking out soft, flowing fabrics and comfortable gowns suited for lounging. "These are perfect," she chirped, holding them up for Claude to see. The tailor pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "Your Highness, these are my designs." "You truly like them?" Athanasia nodded. "Of course. They're so comfortable." "I'll take these, oh, and some dresses for formal occasions too." Tears welled in the tailor's eyes. "I never imagined the imperial princess would wear something I made," Claude merely observed in silence as his daughter continued shopping, clearly content. Once Athanasia had made her selections, they left the boutique, only for her to suddenly stop and sniff the air. She turned toward a modest little bakery, with no extravagant signs or decorations, just the warm aroma of fresh bread and pastries wafting through the air. "Something smells good," she murmured, dragging Claude forward. The moment they stepped inside, however, they were met with a tense scene. A group of thugs surrounded a young baker, their postures menacing. Before Athanasia could react, the knights swiftly moved in, drawing their swords as the men dropped to their knees in terror. "The Emperor?" I didn't know," one of the thugs stammered. Felix signaled for the guards, who immediately took the criminals into custody. With the shop now peaceful, Athanasia turned to the baker, who still looked pale from the encounter. "What's in the oven?" she asked, curiously. The young man snapped out of his daze and rushed to retrieve a golden-brown lemon pie, placing it on the counter before them. Athanasia clapped her hands. "It smells wonderful." She cut a slice and took a bite, her eyes lighting up. This is delicious. Claude, still holding her hand, allowed her to feed him a small piece. He chewed thoughtfully before giving an approving nod. Humph. It's acceptable. The baker's nervousness faded into pride. Thank you, Your Majesty, Your Highness. Athanasia, however, noticed the empty tables and lack of customers. Why is your shop so empty? The baker hesitated before confessing, I haven't been able to pay rent in months. I took out a loan to start this business, but I had to prioritize repaying the debt first. Athanasia tapped her chin thoughtfully. I see. Your bakery is surrounded by much grander restaurants. It's hard for people to notice this place. The baker looked down, defeated. Athanasia suddenly smiled. If your business doesn't improve, you can come work at the palace as a chef. The baker's eyes widened. The palace? She nodded. You clearly have talent, and I wouldn't want it going to waste. If you decide to accept, I'll be waiting for your answer. She then turned, taking Claude's hand once more as they left the small bakery. As the day ended, she rested her head against Claude's arm, exhausted yet content. Today was fun, she murmured. Claude glanced down at her, a rare softness in his gaze. Humph. As long as you don't make this a habit. She only giggled in response. And so, hand in hand, the emperor and princess, along with Lucas, Felix, and the imperial battalion, made their way back into the grand walls of the imperial city, leaving behind a day that the capital would speak of for years to come. Unbeknownst to them, rumors spread like wildfire about the princess's visit. Within days, customers flocked to the boutique and bakery, eager to taste the pastries that had impressed the emperor and princess themselves. The young baker found himself overwhelmed with orders, his once struggling shop now flourishing. Back within the imperial palace, Athanasia received news of the bakery's sudden success when a servant returned with a fresh box of pastries. She smiled in satisfaction, happy to hear that the small business had not only survived but thrived. Like, comment and subscribe to be notified for updates in the series.